Bump of Chicken has some of the most intelligent songs ever written. They're such an intelligent band. They have the knack for taking in intellectual or scientific concepts and relating it into emotional messages. Their new song, Chronostasis, I don't know how to pronounce it, is a perfect example of that. So Chronostasis or Chronostasis is actually a type of temporal illusion in which the first impression following the introduction of a new concept or event or task demand to the brain can appear to be extended in time. Okay, it's very much out there. So basically what it means is that sometimes when our brain knows that our vision is going to create such a disturbing or an unpleasant experience, what our brain does is that it shuts down that moment by extending the new image. Okay, so for example, you're looking at something and then you shift your gaze. The truth of the matter is that you should be seeing a blur. If your eyes are open, you should see the blur. But that's not a pleasant experience for your eyes and for your brain. So what your brain does is to protect you from that unpleasant experience, it actually takes out that blur. It removes that blur. Your brain knows that that's not a pleasant experience for you, so it removes that blur. What happens is that when you look at the object, because you lost like a millisecond, right? You lost that part. What it does is that your brain is going to extend the first image that you see, your first impression. It'll extend it to compensate for that moment that you lost, that blur that you lost. So for example, you're looking at a watch. If you have a watch with long hand on your peripheral vision, so you're looking at something and it's on your peripheral vision. When you shift your gaze from here to look at the watch, there's a blur that your brain is going to try and delete, right? So if you actually try and pay attention, the long hand that's actually counting the second, it'll appear as if it paused longer than it should have. And that is because your brain compensated for the blur that it didn't want you to experience by extending the first impression of the new event. Okay, now in the song of Bump of Chicken, it talked about that new event, that moment that our brain took out because it was an unpleasant experience. They're talking about that moment, and they're talking about how they want to be in that moment. They don't want to lose that moment because that moment still has the remnants of the previous experience or previous person they want to keep in their life. Okay, now that is just to explain what the title is all about. But the best part of the entire song is actually the entire song. So why don't we watch it together now? This song is actually I've watched this just for full disclosure. This is the second time I've actually listened to this song, so to a certain degree I kind of know what I'm already getting myself into. So I just for a first insight or first input, the song is kind of sort of like, it's not really totally upbeat, but it's not too slow either, which is a direct contrast of the actual message of the song, because the message is so sad and so tragic. Okay, let's go. And also I just want to appreciate the cinematography, and the Japanese are actually really, really great cinematographers. To a certain extent, I feel like that's in large part because of the natural beauty of their country. Like they have the eye for the what's beautiful, like the natural beauty, because their country by nature is so beautiful. And so just want to mention just how beautiful this imagery is. When I first look at it, I thought I was just looking at a tree. and some chairs. And then they realize there's this one lone person down there that seems to be waiting for something. And it is very consistent with the lyrics, who's talking about he's telling somebody, if you're not going to open the door, I'm not gonna enter that room, because it's either you will have to be there. If I'm going to enter that room, you will have to be there. And then this beautiful huge tree that's on the background. It's so beautiful, but how the upper portion, the view from the sky, actually blurs everything. Okay, so remember the example that I used about the blurring, how the brain knows that it is an unpleasant experience for you, so the brain chooses to take that out. It's the same as this one. There is this part of the scenery that seems to be very unpleasant, regardless of how beautiful that is, because it is a beautiful scenery, it's a beautiful photography, but there is something sad in this. There's something so lonely and so tragic. Okay, let's go. It's just one beautiful scene after another. They're just master of words. I love that. I love this. Like footprints of a nostalgia left behind as a memory. It's multiple layers of memories, multiple layers of a past. They're putting it all together in one long thought that makes the memory even more painful. This footprints sort of already talks about, it already connotes memory or the past. Nostalgia already connotes the past. And then they put it in one sentence, so there's like multiple layers of a memory of the past. And then they go into the one next line, and it's left behind to be a memory. So it's a memory, and then you leave it behind as a memory. So it makes it even more painful. And then just observe how they're using the continuous use of blurs in the cinematography. Like there's always a portion of the scene, there's always a portion of the framing that's blurred. So no matter how beautiful that scenery is, there's still something that's blurred. So you can't fully see what it is that you're looking at. This is another portion that I love. Promises that someone dropped litter the streets. So I've never really thought of it that way. Like whenever you go to a place, whenever you visit, whether it's the street or the mountains or just anything, anywhere in general, I have never really stopped to think about how many memories have been made in that specific place. The promises that have been broken, bonds that have been formed, relationships that have been strengthened, things that have been discovered. I've never really thought about those things. Like when I sit down in a restaurant, I just sit down to eat, but I never really thought about, hey, how many relationships have been broken in this seat? Like how many hundreds like a couple has a couple ever been in this restaurant and actually broke up or actually bonded or something? There's just it's just that it's just amazing what they provoked it with these lines. The promises that someone dropped now litter the streets. When you're walking down the street, have you ever thought about it? Like how many promises are now littering these places? Unbroken, unfulfilled promises. Just beautiful. Okay. in between the memory of when time stopped, I've heard your voices many times. Okay. Okay, so remember my example of about that blur. So the what he's saying is that when I transition from one place to another, in that moment when I was transitioning, you were still there. Like I still heard your voice until I shifted to this new place that I was in. So that's why he wants to go back he wants to recover that moment, because in that moment that his brain shut down or was erased from memory or whatever, that person, the other person he lost, was still there. I do remember one event when I had this very emotional, I was just going back to what I was talking about earlier. I remember this specific event when I was talking about when I went to San Francisco, I think. Was it San Francisco? Yeah, I think it was in the Bay Area. And there was this bench, and in the bench, on the bench, there were a lot of carvings and there were a lot of writings. People who have been there would usually write, like, Joe Smith was here or whatever. And then there was this one on the exact spot I sat in. When I stood up, I saw someone carved, and it was a name of a girl, love, and then the love sign, and then the name of a boy. And I think that was one moment when I just smiled, and I actually thought, well, I hope you're still in love. Because I really wished in that moment, I hope you two are still in love. You two are still together, and you two are still happy. But that was the extent of, like, my thought process. I didn't really think about what was happening when you two were together that led you to the two of you writing this or carving this. Were you two laughing? Were you two making promises? Did you just got together? Were you on the brink of a breakup and decided you were going to give it another try, and then to commemorate that moment you wrote that thing? So anyway, I will be flashing that. You should have seen it. I should have flashed that specific photo. I think I put it in my Instagram. But if you two are watching, I hope you two are still together and are still in love. Okay. Also, this line, I'm still searching for the words I hid away. The thing is that the music, the beat, they're very simple. The melody is also very simple. It's actually almost the same all throughout. But the beauty, really, specifically of this song, is in the lyrics. It's actually in the thought and in the message of the song. So that's why I'm not really commenting a whole lot when it comes to the beat and the instruments, because it's really very simple. I think they are using 2, maybe 3. So they have this bass in the beginning. That's 2, right? And then in the bridge, they would actually add that layer. So that's drums, maybe. So I think they're just sort of, I feel like they're just these are maybe 2 to 3 instruments, but they're putting multiple layers of the same instrument, so it sounds complicated. I could be wrong though. I don't know. But anyway, this is how good they are as a band, that they can actually make the song interesting all throughout, even though they're just using the same instrument, the same beat all throughout the song. See, it's so beautiful, all this imagery. There's always this blur. The way there's so many things, even though the scenes are almost empty, like this one, when he's standing here. He's standing here. It's just like an empty room. And then there's just him. The one interesting element that's breaking the monotony of the blue hue is the orange pair of pants. But then it looks so full. Like the scene looks so full simply because of how the choice of the blurring, because they've blurred most of the scene. There is so much question now in your brain. What is it that you're blurring? What's in there? Okay. It's so beautiful. I'm still searching for the words that I hid away. Right? Don't you experience that? Like you were almost in the middle of there are so many thoughts that we try to push away, and then time comes, we want to take them, like recover them to say it, we can't find it anymore. Sorry for my internet connection. And again, just pay attention to how they're using very simple imagery, like a sneeze, a voice, and even the cinematography. They're made of, every scene is actually made of simple things: a tree, a room, a chair. But it's how all of these elements are put together that makes things interesting, that puts another layer to the entire thing. Just like how they wrote the lyrics and how they created the beat. It's not just because everything is so simple doesn't make the entire thing simple. Everything is so simple, but the way that they've put it together makes it so interesting. I've never thought you can actually use blur this way. So interesting. I want to leave a piece of me behind that even time can't erase. Because you know what they say, right? Like, there's nothing time can't heal. There's nothing time can't push away. There's just, time is the one element in the world, in our life, that is so real and so intangible, and we're so helpless against it. It's like it's just, I don't know if there's any kind of superpower that can counter time. But he's saying that if I can leave behind a piece of me with you, that time can't erase. Like, no matter how far into the future, you won't forget me. It will always stay just as passionate, just as real, then he will do it. But just that concept of time, how ruthless time is. And this another part I love. Someday I'll be able to tell you the meaning behind the words I uttered that only sounded like what I mean. Actually, the original English translation was kind of hard to grasp, because it was like I faked it with words that only sounded like that. Like it only sounded like what I meant to say, but those weren't. But those words weren't what I wanted to mean, what I meant. So, but the entire idea, like, someday I'll be able to tell you the meaning behind the words I uttered that only sounded like what I mean. Like, I didn't know how to say it, so I just said it in whichever way I can. But that's not what I meant. So someday I'll be able to tell you what that is. It makes me sort of think about the things that I failed to say to the people that I care for, and now either they're gone or I can't reach them anymore. One of the things that I realized when I went back to the Philippines was that, like, when I got in touch again with the friends that I've lost touch with when I moved here, just how it reminded me of the beautiful memories that we've shared, how much they have impacted my life and stuff. And so one of the things that I told myself is that I'm not going to lose touch, not going to lose the communication with them again, the connection and the communication with them again, because I don't ever want to like lose the words and the thoughts. I will want to constantly make them realize and constantly be in them, you know, be in that friendship and the relationship that we have. Okay. This is how multi-level this song is. Just there's so many things going on in my mind when I was listening to it. You see how they're using many places or locations that connotes transition, like that bridge, that speed element of lines. I'm still searching for the words. Probably the favorite line next to, yeah, it's probably my favorite line, or that part when he was saying, "Someday I'll be able to tell you the meaning behind the words I uttered that only sounded like what I meant." So one of those things. Okay, this is the ending. So they remain one of my favorite bands to listen to in any condition or any shape or form, just because, as I've said, there is so much sensibility and intelligence in their lyrics. They have the knack for actually putting together an intelligent with an emotional concept and creating something that's very relatable, because through the intellectual level of the emotional journey, they're kind of forcing you to sort of go deeper in what you're really feeling and understanding your emotions, and to a certain extent reflect really on you, on your life and your relationships. And I think that's what makes them so different from other bands, the ability to put intellectual concepts with emotional messages. So yeah, please listen to it. Chronostasis or Chronostasis, I don't know how to pronounce it. It's such a beautiful song. Thanks.